A woman who police have learned was the victim of severe domestic violence for years shot her abuser in the midst of a violent assault and will not face charges. Said the district attorney, "This is why people have guns." Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I cover a lot of defensive gun uses cases on this channel because I think it's important to get that information out when anti-gun folks claim that guns are rarely, if ever, used for self-defense. I wanted to cover this one specifically because they also say that a woman in a domestic violence situation is the last person who should have a gun because it will only be used against her. But this story proves that that is absolutely not always the case and could in fact be the thing that saves her and her children. The woman in this case, Kylie King, not only had 2 small children in the home, but was also 6 months pregnant. But before I get into the details, this video is brought to you with the help of the Attorneys on Retainer program from the Attorneys for Freedom. If you ever find yourself in a self-defense incident, you do not want to have to face it alone. The folks in the Attorneys on Retainer program are actual attorneys whose entire job it is to give you legal advice and represent you if you use your gun in self-defense. They are not an insurance company, so a call to their hotline gets you an attorney rather than an insurance adjuster, and their only requirements are that the incident happened after you signed up and that you reasonably acted within good faith. They cover everything from felonies to misdemeanors, appeals, and even bail bonds, and now they also cover red flag hits, expungement, and a ton of other things. So switch over from your existing self-defense coverage today by heading on over to my link in the description, and you can use code LibertyDoll to get $50 off your individual sign-up. Crockett County, Tennessee officers were called to the King home around 11 p.m. on April 17th with reports that a male had been shot and killed in the home. When officers arrived, they found that John King III had been armed with a knife and a pistol, and at the time of being shot, physical evidence showed that he had assaulted his wife with both the gun and the knife and was in the midst of strangling her. It's not clear if Mrs. King used his firearm or her own to defend her own life. As I said in the opener, she is 6 months pregnant and 2 other children were present during the assault. All of this was confirmed in a statement by the Sheriff's Department. Physical evidence revealed Mrs. King faced multiple forms of assault, including being attacked with a knife, a pistol, and strangulation. In a desperate attempt to safeguard her life, the life of her unborn child, and the 2 children in the home, she utilized a weapon to defend herself. According to the couple's individual Facebooks, it looks like they'd been together since about 2010. This would have put them in high school when they got together, as Mr. King passed away at the age of 32. The district attorney has now announced that he recognizes it as a self-defense case and told local news, "She is 6 months pregnant and there were 2 other children in the household. She had no other choice but to defend herself. That is why people have guns. In this case, she used her firearm appropriately to defend not only herself, but her children." The DA's office added that Mrs. King acted out of necessity to protect herself and her family. Quite a different scenario than the narratives that women in these situations would only be further hurt by owning a gun and that the gun will only be turned against them. Now, I am sure that that happens, but in this case, it sounds like we'd be hearing a very different story if Kylie wasn't armed. We might also be hearing a very different story if this wasn't in Tennessee, as there have unfortunately been tons of cases that I've heard of women finally standing up to their abuser, often because their children have gotten involved, and being punished for it, as people are punished in all kinds of self-defense situations. I'm glad that that's not how this situation turned out, but it is really unfortunate that it ever escalated to that point and that someone lost their life. This story also brings up the question of what exactly you write on a man's obituary when he died from being shot while trying to strangle and stab his wife. Whoever wrote John King III's obituary still went with beloved husband and being known for his deep love for his family and whose greatest joy was being a husband. Maybe that's all true. We only know one side of the story, and we certainly don't know the full thing. We never will. But when the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation looked into the case, it turned out that Mrs. King had been a victim of the abuse for years. They haven't expanded on what exactly that means, but it sounds like it was pretty significant. And I personally don't see the love in stabbing and strangling a pregnant woman. Again, we don't know the full story, but from the outside, it looks a little cut and dry. Now, I'd also like us all to remember that women are not the only victims of domestic violence and assault. Men can be and are also victims of domestic assault and are unfortunately less likely to be believed. I unfortunately saw plenty of abuse on both sides of relationships when I worked as a therapist. So if you or anyone you know are involved in a domestic violence situation, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 for help. And hopefully, if you or your loved one is in this kind of situation and it ever comes to this point, that you or your loved one are armed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are new here. Ring that notification bell and drop a comment down below. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there and happy shooting.